We had a strong wake up with the ETF approval hoax on Monday, but notice that Bitcoin is still sitting far above the 27K it was trading at prior. We have Paul from Definity joining us today. We'll look at the different currency markets and the other massive markets like equities and discuss their impact on what's going on there and how it might be impacting crypto. And then we'll dive into the crypto markets. And we'll probably have some time for some viewer suggestions. Welcome to the Crypto Rain channel and our family. Now, if you're looking for crypto news that doesn't have context, or you're looking for panic selling type news or FOMOing in, you can find that in a lot of other channels and places, but not here, because you realize the potential for life-changing gains over a 4 to 8 year period. And you're looking for discussions on becoming a solid, unshakable crypto investor. You're in exactly the right place and the right family, the Rainmaker family. Now, the reason I created this channel is because I was new 6 years ago, like many of you, and many of you are actually been doing this for a couple of years, which is cool. You've been able to grow some experience. Back when I was new, I was looking for a crypto channel and network or group that understood crypto as an investment and discussed the most important things like investment cycles, the different projects out there and the pros and cons of those projects, the risks, the guesses at what upside might be if it all came together well. And I didn't find the type of discussions I was looking for, so we created it. And I say we because it's not just me anymore. It is a family of Rainmakers, and you see them here in the chat. You'll see them in our free Telegram group. The link to that is below, and you will definitely find them in our private Patreon group that allows you access to our Rainmaker private Discord. The Discord is where the best discussion is and the best info. There are other benefits too, but you would have to join us to find out. Do note I'm not a financial advisor. I'm a crypto investor myself. Paul invests in many markets, but he is also not a financial advisor, so none of this would be taken as financial advice to you. We're all big boys and girls in this space, and so each of us must do our own research and make our own decisions. Well, let's go ahead and make it rain on that like button, strap in for the show, and let's welcome Paul.
Well, it's great to be here as always. Markets are gearing up for some interesting moves, and we're in the October period, which is clearly a nervous month, which we can talk about in a moment. But other than that, things seem to be on the main track, which is equities seem to be going higher, and Bitcoin's responding, as you mentioned at the top of the show. There's a few other little macro wrinkles to iron out, shall we say. But other than that, we could be setting up for a really interesting move towards the end of the year.
Yeah, it's interesting how it's all playing out. Now, do you follow Patrick Bet-David at all?
No, I saw a podcast with him with Joe Rogan, and I hadn't heard of him until I saw that podcast. But he seems a pretty switched on guy. And he seems, he felt like one of us, if that's the right thing to say. Now, I don't know what you're going to say about him, but why'd you mention him?
Well, he's really, really smart, and he made his money working hard in the insurance industry and grew an insurance business that was quite sizable and sold that off. And he started his current business, which is where the podcast come from, a number of years ago, but just brilliant guy. And he's been predicting that the market's going to crash coming up. Okay. And so far he's been wrong so far. But I think he made a video the other day on why the markets are still up and why they might be up for a while before they aren't. But he brought out some really interesting information. They surveyed CEOs in the US to ask them if they thought the country, the US, was heading towards a bigger recession. And 80% of them said strongly agree. Now, what's interesting is he was talking about how things happen after money is infused in the market, and when interest rates, the reversal starts from when they're hiking interest rates to when they start bringing them down, and how long after they start bringing them down for the recession, the real pain to really start hitting. And it was anywhere from like 9 months to 18 months where the real pain in the economy is really felt. Second to that, he was talking about auto repossessions and the amount of available credit people have. So a lot of people had money from stimulus, And most have now spent through all that money in their savings account, and they are actually adding to their credit card balances in huge numbers. And so there's all these indicators of pain going forward. The number of auto repossessions, the car companies can't keep up with it. They don't have enough repossessors to repossess all the vehicles that are being repossessed. The number of foreclosures that are starting to hit U.S. markets is high. I talked to some real estate people lately about what that's looking like. I talked to an appraiser yesterday who deals with that, and he said the number of bank appraisals he's having is shooting through the roof. And I was like, interesting. What's interesting is what goes up always comes down, but sometimes it doesn't come down till way, way after you think it will. And judging when it will actually come down is quite tricky. As we know from The Big Short, Michael Burry almost lost everything, even though his prediction was right, because he thought it would happen much sooner. And so as you're looking at the markets, I agree that we're probably going to have even equities or stocks go up soon. I mean, that's what the charts are saying. What are you looking at on the chart specific to equities and other markets that you see are looking fairly bullish?
Well, just to go back to Patrick Bet-Davis, or David, sorry, I would say you can have some very smart people who have made a lot of money in one business or another and are very street smart. And I wouldn't necessarily say that he's someone who you should ignore. I would say it's interesting to listen to views, but is he a trader and does he understand the markets? That's a very different proposition. To say that the market will crash based on what? Just on the fundamentals being, inverted commas, bad. We've had those sorts of comments all this year and the market's gone up. And the only thing that we can see right now that is affecting the markets is the situation in the Middle East and the current geopolitical risks, which, if you remember, when Russia invaded Ukraine, we had exactly the same situation in the markets, and it seems to have kind of normalized now to the market ignores it and moves on to the next thing. So at the moment, we're seeing, I was going to bring that up in terms of gold and what's happening with gold, but it's very unusual that you would get this sort of heads up on a potential crash. It's very unusual that you'd have people actually coming out and saying the market is going to crash here. And unless he predicted the last one, I mean, let me put it another way.
I don't know that he did. And also, if you look at the biases, right? If somebody's involved in the insurance industry, they're usually getting involved in like protecting risk, and they see a lot of the events that happen, right? They get a call and it's like, oh my gosh, that life insurance policy or that fire insurance policy I need. And so there might be a bias towards the downside, right? Towards the risk happening with it, because his background is in insurance. And what is insurance thinking? It's all about hedging risk all the time, right? And the downsides that can happen.
Yes.
And
yes.
That's what he was involved in for forever, because he's been calling the reversal for about a year now, and it still hasn't happened. It's a year later. I did find the number of repossessions going up and the number of foreclosures going up. But will that impact equities? Not necessarily. I think there's two pressures pushing against each other, and I can't say I know exactly how it'll play out. One is more money getting printed. So values can fall, but the price might not. Why? Because more money is being printed. And so the markets may not even show a decline, even if the value declines, because what if the money supply doubles?
Well, that's the point that I was going to make as well. It's the bank's ability to wear the losses, how well are they capitalized, and all the things that you've mentioned here are an excuse for interest rates to go down that the market will love. So what people are looking out for is a repeat of what happened in 2006, 2007, when there were loans being made to, everybody in their dog spot, as we say, and including people who didn't really exist. Credit cards were being given out. I mean, it was a very different time. I'm not saying that those problems have been solved, because they haven't, but the market is in a different position. And back then, had you called for a crash, you would have been laughed out the room because the economy looks so good. Right now, I think the market is basically short, still short, and shorting the rally and not believing it will go up anymore, and more position for the market to go down. So the market usually finds the path of most pain, I would, as I would describe it. So whoever's got the majority of the positions wrong, it will go in that direction. So if the market's very long, it will go down. If the market's very short, it will go up, as a general rule. Now, it's also important to see how it responds to negative news. And what you'll find is that the media will pick and choose what they think is negative news based upon a day-to-day basis. So if something in the geopolitical world happens and then the market goes down, they put those two things together and say the market fell because of that. If the market goes up and something happens in the world, then they won't do that. They'll try and find something else that's bullish. So they fit the news backwards into the markets, if you see what I mean. That's why, very often people find it difficult to follow what's happening in the markets by following the news, because they don't seem to make a lot of sense. And there's a good reason for that. And that reason is that the market is, as I've said many times, forward looking. It's not looking at today. It may be interrupted temporarily by short-term scenarios, but longer term, it's on a path to where it's looking for something in the future. And once it gets that and everybody sees it, it will be fully valued at that point, and then it will be looking for the next big piece of news. So as far as I can see, technically, if you were to switch off all the news, which is what I tend to do, and just look at the chart and go from the charting position, unless something changes at the moment, there's nothing to change my view, my bullish view. The markets are moving up. At the worst, you could say they're going sideways. So you've got this trend up from March 20, and then the low that was made in October last year, October to October, we've had, we were looking for a bounce around October again, which we've had, and that was the basing period. So we've had the first move up. Market's moving in the right direction. It's having a bit of a down day today, but this trend is still up. So at the very least, you could say, well, it's gone sideways since November last year. And yeah, it has, but that's not a bear market, and it's not bearish. So it would have to take out the October low for me to start worrying about this being a potential downward trend. So yes, it is correcting from the 1st of August. So we've got this downward move, but in the context of this sideways move and in the context of this upward trend. So when sentiment is still so negative, I think you've got to go with the path of, as I say, least resistance, which is the path of most pain, which is to the upside. So let's see how the market shrugs off this week. Something else to note, of course, is that it's going to be 36 years since the 1987 crash on October the 19th. So that will be tomorrow. So yeah, a few jitters around this time of the month is to be expected. But I think once this week's out of the way, then, and the market doesn't crash, they'll breathe a sigh of relief, and it'll start going up quite aggressively. And I think potentially Bitcoin as well, but we can go through the markets first before we get there, if you'd like.
I did have a question about another point that he brought up, was that during the pandemic, a lot of companies, and during that time interest rates were so low, these companies could borrow at like next to like really, really low interest rates. For example, they could borrow at 3% or below, and they would borrow as much cash as they could, and because it was available for so cheap. And so they were taking that money and investing it and, say, making 6% on it. But a lot of those notes are coming due, and they'll have to refinance that at present interest rates. And so if present interest rates come right down in the coming 6 months, it's less of a big deal than if they stay high like this. Whether they stay high like this, they're going to be refinancing those rates into 8%. And if they're only making 6% on it, they have to either get out of that money if they're liquid enough to get out of that money. if they're illiquid with that money, they're going to actually go bankrupt. In fact, the first company declared bankruptcy, and I don't remember what the name of it was, but the first one to get hit with that just happened. And it could be a bigger snowball effect, and it just comes down to timing, right? Can they last another 6 months or 9 months? Because the rates are surely going to come down. And if they come back down, and I think the Fed understands this problem, and so that's why they, I think, pushed them up so high so fast, because they knew they had to bring them back down for the election year, but also because a lot of this debt was going to need to be refinanced. And so I think that's why Jerome Powell went like he did. But we'll see this coming year. If they take a lot of that pressure off, that'll be good for the markets. It'll be good for the companies, because if it cascades, if they aren't tracking this, and it could cascade into a whole bunch of company failures, which would be bad for everything.
So a lot of that depends. I mean, that's right. There are a few ifs there, but we have to look at which companies you're talking about and which sector they're in, and whether the fact that they're in trouble means that they could be bought by someone else who want their IP, or whether the bank will allow them to borrow more money. And that will depend on whether the bank is making enough money to warrant that happening. So a lot of it is dependent on the banking cycle and whether they will lend the money. But there's also another element to it, which is inflation. So if inflation is running higher, then whichever company can increase their costs. I mean, my car insurance has gone up by 40% all of a sudden, and it's crazy. So if you're an insurance company and you're bumping up your prices at a ridiculous rate, then you can make that money back, because people will wear it because of inflation. Of course, they're going to shop around, but it depends. It just depends what business you're talking about, and it depends what they've done. So yes, you're right. If they've over-levered themselves and they've got debt to pay, that will impact their profits. But let's look at what business they're in and how much they're now charging for that business. And when they come due, when it does come due, inflation might be at 10%, real inflation. So the real market inflation, not what is alleged to be by the figures. So they potentially increase their prices enough to take that into account. So it's not necessarily a problem. It's a greater problem if the banking system is under threat and under pressure, and you'll see that because the market will just start to go down broadly. And that's the thing about equities. They, in some ways, they're similar to the crypto space. They're really a momentum play. So when you trade equities, when everything goes wrong, they all go down together. There's no real diversity. So you could have 10 different stocks, or 20 different stocks, or 50 different stocks, or stocks in different countries. But when the fear really starts, everything moves down in one go. But we're not seeing that at the moment. We're seeing a big divergence between lots of different markets. And in general, they're all looking technically at this point in time okay. So I'd be very interested to see whether the market squeezes up a bit and how that impacts the the views and the positions, whether all these things that you're saying here, which are valid concerns, whether they just get shrugged off. And that in itself will tell you how strong the market is. If it can go up against that weight of negative opinion, then it tells you that it's a really strong market, which I also think is the same with Bitcoin. There's been so much negative press on Bitcoin with interest rates going up and with the crises that are going on. People have said many times it's not a crisis hedge because of whatever reason, because it went down before. And look at it, it's been doing very well. It's still doing well. It's still holding in very well. So I think it's how the market responds to those valid negative concerns.
I would agree with that. I think sometimes fundamentals, and the reasons why I like fundamentals is because eventually the fundamentals catch up. But sometimes it takes a while, and that can be the frustrating part with being a fundamental investor. And so when the housing market crashed, I saw that coming from a mile away. the number of overbuilding. Like, I knew communities where I hadn't visited the Florida market, but I had been Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, California, Las Vegas, all of those markets, mostly the Southwest, and looking at those. And in Vegas and a little bit in California, but Vegas and Phoenix, I saw markets where like there would be a whole subdivision that sold to maybe 2 homeowners, and the whole rest of them were sold to investors. And, and they plan to then rent it out. And so I was just seeing this massive building, like massive overbuilding. And that reverses at some point. And it's only because they made it so easy for anybody to get a loan, and for anybody to get a second loan and a third and a fourth. And housing prices, it seemed like those loans couldn't default because they were getting packaged off and sold as security because defaults were so low. And I didn't understand at the time what was happening on the back end. I did understand, though, that you have whole neighborhoods that almost nobody's living in, and they're just counting on it appreciating what the mortgage is because it's not even rented. And I was like, this doesn't end well. And it took a while, longer than I thought, actually. In 2005, I was like, this has to crash. In fact, in 2004, I was starting to get worried. By 2005, I was like, it's got to crash. And it didn't crash all the way till 2006. But the pain really didn't start feeling, you didn't start feeling the pain till 2007, and then really in 2008. And it bottomed in 2010. And then bottom, the pendulum swung too far to the downside. Things got way too cheap. There were 3-bedroom, 2-bath homes in Phoenix, Arizona, in the outskirts of Phoenix, Arizona, that had been $220,000 that were now selling as a foreclosure for $52,000. And it was like too cheap, right? And then it swung up the other way. That same home today is like $320,000. And it's like, wow, the pendulum swing in real estate. They're not supposed to swing that great, but they did. And a lot of that because the oversupply and the overbuilding and this rampant speculation by so many investors and so many builders. We are seeing a different market. We're seeing different fundamentals, though. And I don't know how to interpret it all. And one of the fundamentals is the massive overprinting that really kicked off. I mean, every president since what's his name? Nixon, every U.S. president since Nixon took the U.S. dollar off the gold standard. And I think he had to, because every president for the last few prior to him were overspending. And I think they had actually been overspending versus the reserves they had. And Nixon was just the one to call it. But ever since then, it's gotten worse. And then it especially got worse in 2008, the massive overprinting in the U.S. And this is a new problem in the U.S. in that it's gotten so big. And we have a few places we can look at. We can look at Argentina. We can look at Venezuela and what happened there. We can look more recently over at Turkey. And it's not that bad yet. But what's interesting about Venezuela's stock market never went down. The value went down on a lot of the stocks, but the price never did because there was so much overprinting. And is the U.S. going that way? Are they going to continue this blow off top increase in U.S. dollars? Well, it seems like it might, but we'll see how it plays out. So I don't know that the Biden administration is looking to change that. In fact, I think they're scared to change it. And is it all the Biden administration's fault? No. I mean, it's a problem they inherited and they've worsened. And it's a problem the previous administration inherited and worsened. Right. So yeah, Valentin Zamora says, I'm from Argentina. Fingers crossed. I hope it doesn't go that way. And that is part of the appeal of Bitcoin as a hedge against that kind of stuff. And even ETH and some of the other cryptocurrency, though a lot of crypto is more allowing the internet to do things it couldn't do before. But Bitcoin specifically is kind of like a digital gold. And if they figure out to lower the transaction costs, maybe a hedge against the US dollar.
You made a few points there, and if I can come back to them,
yeah.
One was that what you saw happening in the markets, in the property market, then took many years before it then turned, and that's something that could well happen again. So we could be a few years away from a turn, even though the market looks, inverted commas, crazy. So that $350,000 property that you were mentioning could easily go to 500,000 or maybe 1 million this time. So let's not discount that. You could be right, but the cycle can continue for longer than you expect. With regard to the dollar, the dollar was linked to gold, and that was the problem, or the issue that Nixon decided temporarily, inverted commas, to deal with. So everybody knew that they could exchange their dollars for gold around the world. And so when the US started to print more, or there was a suggestion that they'd printed more dollars than there was gold, and people wanted to exchange their currency and get their reserves that were held in the US back. I think it was France that asked for their money back, or their gold back, I should say. And there became this run on the dollar that then stopped the backing of it. So fiat currency, as we know it, fiat meaning on command, all currencies fiat currency. So, the pound, we've said it before, was linked to sterling silver. That's why it's called sterling. And so this goes back a very long way, but money only has value because we pretend it has value, and that's kind of it, really. There's nothing backing it. And so the arguments about Bitcoin not being worth anything because it's just cryptographically created is the same argument. And it's like, well, what's backing money today? Nothing. So there is an argument that if you'd stayed on the gold standard, it would have held the economy back because you couldn't print enough in order to make the economy grow. But these are long economic conversations. But what we can guarantee is that when you go from one administration to another, they're going to abuse the position and spend more money than they have, and that's continuing until we get a new regime, a new system. And hello, what is it going to be? CBDCs probably. So it's interesting the way the solution seems to rear its head at the time that we're heading towards this big problem. So if you are interested in looking at Austrian economics, you'll learn a lot from that. I'm not an expert in Austrian economics, but it predicts that every fiat currency system eventually collapses because of the problems that you're speaking about, which means that if we're close to that form of potential currency collapse, and that would mean all currencies collapse, because remember, it's one currency against another, then gold or precious metals or anything that is real hard assets, plus potentially Bitcoin, and other cryptocurrencies could do very well in that environment. And the last phase of that is usually a very high inflationary environment, a kind of blow off inflationary environment. So we're not there yet, and it's not happened as yet, but it could. So this is what we have to look out for. So if that happens, I think you're going to get a strong rally in the stock market before we get there. So that's why I don't think we're quite at the end as yet. So perhaps a couple more years.
Yeah, and it will start to show up in the charts. The truth is, we'll be looking at this on a Wednesday, and Paul will start to be like, this is getting concerning. If it breaks below this line, I'm going to get really concerned.
Yeah.
The next week, we're going to be there, and it's like it broke to that below that line. That's very concerning.
Yeah, I mean, you'll see the pressure in different places. So, I mean, one important one, I guess we could talk about this for hours, but one important area for me is to look at what we call interest rate cyclical equities, which is your banks, your property market stocks, and less so the tech stocks, and they start to go down ahead of the market. So before the broader market starts to turn, those will turn first. So if you look at 2005, 2006, I think I showed a chart of that in our private, when we did that private session. The market turned ahead of the rest of the market, and that should happen again. So you will get some clues there will be some volatility, shall we say, at the top of the market to indicate that we are near the end. But what we're looking for is a disparity between opinion, which is the market sentiment being really, really bullish, and what we're seeing in the chart, which is not bullish. So once you get that divergence, that is the sign that the market is going to turn. And that's why I'm saying at the moment, I don't think it is, because I'm just hearing this from too many places that the market is going to crash and it's going to go down and what have you. And you just don't tend to get that sort of heads up on a crash. The people will, there will be some mentions of it, but not when we're not in that frenzied buying phase, or we haven't seen it. We haven't seen that crazy sort of everybody's buying and everyone's partying and everyone's making so much money that they don't know what to do with it. We haven't seen that yet, and I think we still need to see that before we get a crash.
Good points. Good points. Any other markets that you're looking at? So this is the Dow Jones Industrial. What are the stocks doing versus what Dow Jones is doing?
Yeah, so this is, I just put this in because, this was the low that we were looking for, the correction. And as you can see, it's starting to go up, having a bit of a bad day, but that trend is reversing. As far as the NASDAQ goes, it's at highs or recent highs, and it's still, I mean, that's not bearish yet. It's still not bearish. If I was short that, I'd be break even on the position, perhaps, if the last month or so. So it's really not gone anywhere. And I still think the trend is up, even though it's broken a trend line. That's absolutely fine. It was going up at a very high clip. The S&P, this trend line here, 200-day moving average, all of those things are still pointing upwards. And this is just a corrected phase back down to what was really good support. So resistance and support has worked very well. So one other small thing is, in Elliott wave terms, when you get a 5-wave move, you'd see 5 waves to the downside on any big move. So you'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But when the market crosses back over the previous resistance point here, so you can't have that. That's an invalidation of a downward trend. So this cannot be 5 waves down. It can't be counted as 5 waves down. It can only be counted as 3 waves down. 3 waves are usually a corrective phase. So you can get very complex with Elliott wave. I'm not going to do that. But all I'm saying is that this move here through this particular support resistance point, which is, this resistance point here, that the fact that it went through there is actually far more important than it may look. So for me, that keeps this trend on the upside, as well as everything else that we've talked about. So Russell 2000, smaller cap stocks, that leads into what you were saying about what Patrick Bet-David was saying. Perhaps smaller companies have a bigger problem when it comes to financing. And if this breaks down, it might not be particularly nice. And it is under pressure, to be fair. So, let's watch that. But it's not in a bear trend. If this was a tug of war, who's won, the Bulls or the Bears? It's still all to play for. So we've not had a resolution of this area here, and when we do, we're going to get a really big trend, and that could be to the downside. I keep my options open. I have my core view, and if I'm wrong, then I'll change my view. But at the moment, I don't see any reason to change it. Now, one of the factors that I think is really important to look at the moment, or a couple, is one is the dollar, and the other one is gold. And what we're seeing with gold now, you might say this is due to what's going on geopolitically and the fear of war and all that stuff, which clearly is the case. But usually the news comes along to fit what's going on with the price. And I know that might sound strange, but this is always the way. This technically has been looking like it wants to break out over this high all this year. So 1, 2, 3 resistance points. This gold versus the US dollar. And we're heading towards this high. When it breaks it, this could go a long way. And that would normally imply that the dollar goes down. So you might say, well, surely you'd be buying dollars during time of war or potential time of war. Well, that explains why the dollar was so strong, going all the way up. This period here, there was a lot of planning, or the market can see things that we can't see. So it's now broken this trend line, and just when it looks like the absolute right time to be buying gold, buying the dollar, this could be the perfect time for it to go down. So in terms of reversal, we've broken the trend line, left shoulder, head, potential right shoulder, shouldn't go higher than 106, sort of 80. And when it breaks 105.5, that completes the top. So I'm not hoping, but I think if this is going to play out the way I expect, this should break this low sometime this week. And if it does that, then we will see a big risk on situation. Now, if I'm wrong and this goes up for another up leg, okay, you know, that's certainly a scenario. This is just a potential top at this stage. But again, it's a sentiment thing. Now, again, the reason why I mention this is because all risk on leads towards what's going on in the cryptocurrencies. And we've seen a great breakout from support, you know, break of this resistance at 28,547. It's not closed over it yet. It's just broken it and come below, which is a bit frustrating, but we're heading in the right direction. So it's held this support. And if anything, I had been, you know, bullish on it. I've been expecting it to go higher, perhaps more so than maybe the media has. And whilst it has been in this range and a bit frustrating from a short-term perspective, there's nothing to change the view that this is in an upward trend. And so the more we work towards this key high at 3,200, 32,000, the more it sort of gets pulled towards that resistance, the more bullish I'm going to become. So you have to remember that when the markets get like this, there'll be many people who just stop watching it and turn their back on it, and it will just be the time when it goes. So when most people have decided that nothing's happening and they'll return to it sometime next year, well, it'll probably be much, much higher by next year, and they'll be too late for that. So, or not necessarily even too late, just that they'll find it very difficult to jump aboard the train once it's really moving fast. So this is a good sign. I mean, it's moving in the right direction. ETH hasn't been performing as well. It's been more range bound. It's broken this trend line now, which is not great. I'd prefer it to have held over this. Big picture, still think it will turn back up. I don't see any rush to buy it at this moment. I just think it's a holding pattern. And once it breaks something more significant, this 1790 level here, which comes across against these two resistance points, then I think I'll be a bit more interested in getting on board. So it'd have to start moving for me to want to buy it. So at the moment, it's just in a holding pattern going sideways. But often Bitcoin will go first, and then the others will follow, including the altcoins. So we've got to wait for those to feel the kind of influx of funds, and then it gets spread out across the other market or the rest of the market. I mean, that's just a general, just talking very generally. Obviously, certain individual ones will lead the way, or can lead the way.
Perfect. I want to jump in some of the comments that come
Sure.
in. Bugsy, before we kicked off the show, said first like. Great.
Nice one.
Bugsy is one of our Patreon/private Discord members, long time. He's also one of our admins in our Telegram group. Some other things here. Wanted to acknowledge the super chat from Mike. We will actually look at that next before we go into the other altcoins. And so we'll take a look at Barnbridge. It's had some stuff happening on it that's pretty interesting. And then we'll look at this after we look at some of our other stuff that people suggested. We'll take a look at OMI, and PM asked me to give him an idea on the value. If you do send a super chat, you get bumped to the front of the queue before everything. And so thank you, Mike, for doing that. Chris Ashby says, thanks for coming on, Paul, and says, hey, Raymond, happy Wacky Wednesday.
Very good.
Awesome. So Barnbridge, interesting. It looks like, so I was doing a little bit of research on this, and let me just share my screen here. Sometimes fundamental research can be hard to come by. You can't get it near as quick as you can just by looking at the charts. But I found CoinMarketCap to be pretty helpful in this, because sometimes I don't know everything that's going on with the 20,000 different altcoins out there. But by looking at the comments on CoinMarketCap, sometimes you can get a feel, because there are people that follow certain tokens like religiously, right? And they know exactly what's going on. And sometimes you can weed through some of the crap comments that are on here for some of the good ones. Like, for example, bonded dead now, pump and dump, eated people money. Here is analysis. I'm pretty sure I don't want to read their analysis. I would suggest they work on their English skills before I can trust their analysis. But going down here, this is interesting from Blockpour. The Barnbridge DeFi platform came under SEC investigation and decided to comply. The platform's bond token has since pumped more than 4x. That is interesting. It's some good information. On-chain prices hovered around $1.60 and shot up to $6.75 by the 16th, while the token has seen 11 million in volume since the 13th. Find data on bond. So that is some good fundamental information that tells us what this wick is all about. So the price, they said it was around 160. Yeah, they're right. 166 right here. And probably that's when the SEC news came out that just suppressed it, because it had been hovering around 220, dumbed it down to here, and then that jumped it up to, and sometimes CoinMarketCap doesn't show the full wick that it went to. So it, it only shows it going to $1.66 here. It might have even gone lower. And it probably went higher here before coming back and retracing. Now, interestingly enough, on this one, it's got some kind of wick in its past that doesn't look too very different, especially if we put this on a log scale. And it's like, what's going on with this? Now, Barnbridge itself is a DeFi play. Here's their website, DeFi native solutions for credit and yield. One of the concerns I have is that it's showing the amount of money that's locked up on this. Total value locked, it's showing, is that 44 million? I would hope for a company that's been out for so long and been in the space for so long that number would be higher. But maybe this is inaccurate or something. I don't know, but a lot of focus is off of DeFi right now. So what I would hope is actually it comes back down, because the market cap isn't bad on this one. The market cap's all the way down to 23 million. And this is one of the, I would say, entering blue chip kind of DeFi projects, but not at a blue chip price. And they could fail. And they're not as big as, what is it? It used to be called Yield. Shoot. What is the big DeFi project? It's one I missed during the last bear market. It absolutely went crazy, went like 2000x. I forget the name of it. So that there's a few plays that are much bigger than where Barnbridge is. And Barnbridge is kind of like pushing up against that, but kind of in the mid range of things. And so its price was way, way higher. If you look historically, the price went to all the way to near $100. Now, when it launched, I'm discounting, when it launched and it came down that cliff. But in the DeFi run up in last bull market, it went all the way to about $90. So it's down 96%, even at today's price. It was down even farther. So it might be a good pickup. Yes, Yearn Finance was the one I was looking for. Cool. Its name totally eluded me. But I was looking at Yearn when it was something else, and I didn't buy it, and it absolutely went crazy. One of the ones that totally got away from me. Anyway, the longer you spend in crypto, you'll have lots of those that coulda, shoulda, woulda, and didn't, because you won't catch every pump. You'll miss out on some big ones. It's just part of being in the game. But 290, I would say that this is a wait for me. I want to see how this plays out. They obviously had kind of a relief rally from getting punished related to them complying with the SEC. And essentially the SEC is like, you're naughty. And then they probably just paid some fine. They said, okay, we're okay with you now. And so for me at the current price, it's totally a wait. I'm not going to FOMO into it. Some people in the comments on the right here think, oh, it's going to come back down a little bit and then it's totally going to take off from here. I haven't seen evidence that DeFi is ready to take off from here. And maybe it is, but I haven't seen that. So, yeah, that's what I'm watching closely. Oh, the one I was thinking of wasn't Yearn, it was Aave. And Aave, before being Aave, was ETHLend. And I was looking at it when it was ETHLend, but I didn't really understand at the time what DeFi did. And so I considered buying it, and I didn't. Of course, there were two tokens that absolutely pumped during the bear market, and that Aave was one of them. It went like 2000x while everything else went down. And the other one that really pumped during the bear market was Chainlink. Cool. Thanks for the super chat, Mike. Did you have any thoughts on this one? Are you able to pull up a chart that?
What's the code? I'll just
Bond, BOND is their term, and you'll find Barnbridge is.
Okay, let's have a look. I mean, that's a decent rally we got here, but it's the worrying thing about this is how quickly it's come back again. So I'd like it to stabilize. I agree with it being a wait. There's a lot of resistance that it's come off against, especially going back to the $6.46. You look here, that's key resistance, and it's sort of spiked through it and then just come back down. So need a bit more evidence that this is turning. I mean, if you look at these highs, they're all still lower. But for me, it becomes interesting when it gets through 6.5. And I know that's a long way away, but you might say, well, why don't I just buy it now? Yeah, you could buy a little bit, I suppose. But it's the way I look at things from a technical point of view, the market has to be in the opposite of this, like trending up. And I can't define this as an upward trend as yet, because it's only made one low, which is an all-time low on this chart, and it's spiked up, which, yeah, great. It may be the change, but if you're going to see a big change, usually you see a big reversal pattern, and sentiment might spike like this, and then it just fizzles out. So I need a bit more evidence. That's why it's a wait. But definitely, I wouldn't just sort of. I always ask myself, if I was about to go on holiday and not look at the markets for 2 weeks, how would I feel? And if I wasn't looking at anything at all, I would think, I wonder what's going on with this. It would be sort of in the back of my mind. So whilst it's a wait, I'd be actively watching it, seeing what sort of patterns it's making, whether this is basing out, if it consolidates and then move higher slowly without any news announcements. I'd much prefer that. So if it was quietly moving higher, but as far as technical levels go, around 6.24 to 6.30, that's what it needs to break for me to get interested.
Perfect. Good suggestion, Mike. It definitely had some relevant stuff, and that there have been a lot of SEC filings that came out. What was that, 2 months ago? And they attacked a whole slew of projects, and I don't even remember, there was 20 to 25 that were on there, it seemed like. And so it's curious. I don't know if this is a new action that came out and then they complied with it. The announcement was just made. I missed the announcement on this. Barnbridge is one that I've followed very loosely. I looked at it a couple times over the years is all. All right, let's jump into some of the viewer suggestions from last week. Let's jump back to a bigger cap one, Cardano, and let's look at what's happening on that. And then I want to look at Solana.
Yeah, Cardano is an easier call at this point. It's the same, really, that I think we looked at it at the tail end of last week. Still consolidating, still a wait for me. This could trade lower. We've got lower highs, pressuring support. So nothing to do here from a technical point of view other than wait. It wouldn't surprise me to see it lower again, just because it's got these lower highs and this trend has been down. But I think longer term, it's got the longer term trend will kick in, and that is up. It's just in the very short term, there's nothing really happening other than it's consolidating. And it may be that we need to see a big breakout to the upside to be the starting gun for the new trend, or some piece of news that kicks it off. But for the moment, as far as the technicals goes, if I was looking through, as I do, looking through a lot of charts, this I'd just flip to the next one and just say that's a wait. So it's a wait for me.
Cardano was one of the ones included a couple months ago on the SEC and the suits against it for being a security, which somewhat surprised me because they went to great lengths. Number one, when they raised funds, they did not allow any U.S. investors. And so it's probably already settled by the court that they can't be deeming it a security because the courts have said buying it on a secondary market by U.S. investors does not make it a security. And so I think their lawsuit is kind of a coast from here because that judge ruling really greatly impacts the suit against them by the SEC. I don't know that the SEC has much of a leg to stand on as long as that precedent holds. But there's still a cloud behind it. And so clouds matter, right? There's extra uncertainty because of that. Now, I'm a fundamental investor. I like to buy when it hits below certain price ranges, and then I hold based on the fundamentals of it till it corrects. And some of the frustrations of that is you don't end up buying at the bottom because you don't know where the bottom's going to be. You buy it when it's undervalued, but sometimes it goes even more up what I feel is undervalued. Secondly, sometimes you just have to wait to see how it all plays out. And sometimes it reverses on you greater before, if you are correct in your thesis, before your thesis ends up becoming correct. And this is what happened to me in 2019, January 2019. I thought this idea of land in a blockchain video game would be a really, really big deal. And this new project was launching that didn't have a video game out. They had raised some funds selling some of their characters. And this project was called Axie Infinity. And I bought their land. And my thesis was this idea of land in a game, if the game catches traction, will be a really, really big deal. And for 18 months, the price reversed farther and down and down and down and down. And then it started to go up. But it was 2 years before I was positive on that investment. And I ended up making 100x on it. And I ended up selling way too early because it literally went 3,000x from where I had bought at. And disappointing that I sold so early, but I think nobody can feel sorry for anyone who made 100x on an investment. So, I'm really not too hurt over it, just kind of like shocked at how right my thesis was. And some of it is holding. Like, I think for me at this price, Cardano is a buy. And its market cap, now I was buying this last bear market cap and its market cap was 1/10 this, and it was cool. I was really excited. The market cap was under $1 billion, and it was in the 600 500 million range at the time. There's more tokens in circulation now, so the market cap is more than 10x where it was back then, even though the price was about 3 cents and hit 2.4 and 1.7 cents. But I think at these prices, Cardano is undervalued for the long term. And as long as it wins its SEC suit, which looks likely, and if it doesn't win its SEC suit, it probably will just have to pay a fine. Though I don't understand how they would lose that suit if it's settled law that as long as it's trading on exchange, it can't be deemed a security for people being able to buy it on an exchange. And I don't know that they raised any funds from U.S. investors that weren't accredited. So I don't know that there's any SEC oversight over that. They raised a lot of their funds from Japan. And Japan has a very, very strict version of the SEC, and they complied with those laws. Japan has no problems with them. So, yeah, we'll see how this plays out. Sometimes it's just the little bit of unknown, the little bit of cloud. But at this price, I love it. Now, do I hold some Cardano? I do hold some. It's probably the only blue chip I really have any sizable number on. And so it's the only one I hold. Cool. All right, let's look at next. I want to look over at Solana because one of our viewers is right. and that probably the Solana ecosystem is undervalued. And Solana, everyone got super hyped on Solana. It was about 2 years ago now. And it went through this big boom. And there was a project that launched, SLND. And SLND went completely opposite from what I thought it would, because I didn't understand that Alameda Research, well, they were the market maker on it. And that market, according to some companies that had Alameda Research be their market maker, as the market maker, they were actually dumping their tokens, and it savaged their value of SolLend. And so we'll look at Solana first. We'll come around to SolLend at the end after we look at some of the others on the schedule. But let's take a look at what's going on with Solana and see what we can see, because there's not just Solana. There's a whole ecosystem around Solana that was absolutely booming 2 years ago. But then the Solana blockchain had some problems and had to shut down, as well as Sam Bankman-Fried had some massive problems and FTX crashed. And they were one of the big people pushing the whole Solana ecosystem. And they were providing, Alameda Research was providing some liquidity on some of those projects. And according to some of them, Alameda Research was secretly dumping their token.
Yeah. So, sorry, was that for me to come in and
Yeah.
Okay.
What are you seeing on Solana?
Yeah. So it technically is looking better than Cardano at the moment. So hopefully Cardano will do this. It will start to reverse, and then we get this small upward move that's at the beginning of at least a short-term upward trend that we can build on. Solana has been actually technically much better because it's got this upward trend line, which it's respected since its sort of panic sell-off in December last year. So it's almost like night and day between last year and this year. And whilst it hasn't been in a very strong upward trend, it has been in a trend and a consolidation that is positive. So these lows are rising, and the resistance is there. We can see where the resistance is. So it wouldn't take much to flip this into quite a strong trend. So I would say this is still a wait, but I'm getting very close to pulling the trigger on a buy here, because through 2662, I think if it gets through there, there's only one level left, which is 3240, and this could be really trending nicely to the upside, which I think it will. But it's just a question of, are we a bit too early? Do we commit capital now and then just have it sit there, or should I wait until it's actually really moving, and then whilst I'll be paying more for it, at least I'm guaranteed that the train has actually got some chance of moving. So that's always the decision. Do you wait for the more obvious signal that it's trending and pay a bit more, or do you try and get in early and risk going sideways? But technically, this is much more a much more positive chart than the Cardano one. So if I had to choose between them, I'd be buying this.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm going to flip over to the screen. And just looking at this, what's interesting is, as a fundamental investor, I like to buy cheap. So I usually buy at an earlier point than Paul does. What Paul is really liking is this is a base for a reversal. Now, there's no guarantees it'll reverse, but this is the base you often see before the trend does correct, right? So you see this low, you see a higher low, and that it keeps respecting this trend line. And if it continues respecting this and breaks above these other points, then it's showing you what a reversal looks like. And so then essentially the odds are stacked in your favor, which is why Paul takes that bet, because the investors that make money, what they do is, it's always risky, but you're just stacking the odds in your favor so that your chances of winning are higher than they are of losing. And you won't win every time, but when you're taking bets where the odds truly are stacked in your favor, you are going to win more than you lose. And that's how investors make money. It's like gambling, but the odds that you're taking are for you, as opposed to gambling where the odds are actually against you. And so it's not gambling, it's investing, and it's knowing when the odds are in your favor. And so that's what Paul's looking for, is just this pattern of reversal that it respects his trend line, and then the odds are stacked in his favor, and then he enters. Me, I normally would enter something low, but at this point I did not. I was tempted to buy Solana, but I was at the time, there were a lot of developers fleeing the Solana ecosystem, and so I wasn't interested to buy here because if Solana didn't survive that, I didn't want to ride it all the way to zero. Normally, I would if I felt stronger about the Solana ecosystem. Since then, there is development happening on Solana, which is interesting to me. I'm seeing the right things. So I would say this is a buy for me. In fact, last we looked at it, it was on this lower trend line, and I said it was a buy because I suspect it will continue to respect this trend line, and it will probably, and it's just a probably, there's no guarantees, it'll break to the upside from here. And that Solana will be a force to be reckoned with in the future. Okay, one of the big backers behind it, which was Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX, well, he wasn't as smart as everyone we all thought that he was supposed to be, and there were some other problems going on there we weren't aware of, and there's some other problems with people leading Alameda Research that were crushing problems, like, gosh, one that I put a good $12,000 into, which was SLND, that may not recover. We'll look at the charts at the end and see. Yeah, ICP. We've got a few things for ICP, and we will include that as well. Sapra Miska is pretty confident on ICP here. F everything. ICP will swallow all crypto very soon.
How will it do that?
I can't say that would be true, but maybe it does. Well, we'll have to include it and look at.
Definitely, I want to see that chart.
I know, right? Makes you curious. Let's see if the chart showing anything like that. Sour D also asked, yo, Rain, hope you got the VV Iron Man Funko Fidgetal today. It looked cool. I didn't get it. It's just, I don't want more physical collectibles around to have to worry about now. Now, when I get my really, really nice house, I'll have a room dedicated for that kind of stuff. And I can always just buy one then, even if they're 3 or 4X. Here, if it comes out being as cool as it is, there will always be a market for it, and I don't mind paying a higher price later, but I did not want to have to worry about keeping it now and moving it around later. So though it looks cool, and this whole idea of fidgetals. So Paul,
I'm lost. I don't know.
the current
Funko Fidgetal,
which we followed, Ecomi's token, which they have the VV app. So the OMI token, their VV app, made a partnership with Funko. And Funko, if you bought this Iron Man Funko, you got a digital version of it too. So they call it Fidgetal, meaning you get the physical and you get the digital.
that sounds cool.
Yeah.
I would have bought one had I known.
Yeah, Funko has turned out to be like a really cool brand, right? When I first saw those, I was like, well, those are cool and catchy. And they ended up creating a huge craze and made tons of money. And, they're still cool. They've expanded to make, like I saw the other day in the store, there was like a Batmobile one that was bigger and like a motorcycle one. I forget who the hero was. And I was like, those are really cool. Funko, congratulations. They're making cool collectibles. All right. So let's jump over to Render, Render was super hot. If you remember a couple months ago, let's look at what the price is doing and see what's going on with the token. Is it still so hot? Did it have a correction like I suspected it would? Where are things at?
Just before we get there, Marvel Universe, which something we talked about a month or so ago, was the how I thought it got lost its way a little bit. Iron Man, who would get rid of Iron Man as a character? That's the craziest thing you could ever do. And this kind of proves it. If you're still going to be selling sort of products on the back of it, they need to bring these characters back in the same way that, James Bond never really dies. He's just reinvented. Yeah. Okay. Robert Downey Jr., he is Iron Man, of course. And I know they've just got rid of a load of characters, but it's such a bad mistake. And they just need to admit it, get over it, do something with, in one Superman, he spun around the world and made time go backwards and then saved the dame, so let's just do that, and we'll all just go yeah, Iron Man again, please.
They will find a way to do that, right? When they need the revenue hit, they need to take on a bunch of revenue. They will be like, let's bring Iron Man back, and they will create a story around that. And then
or he's got a son somewhere that you didn't know. Him and Pepper Potts really got it on, right? And then it's Iron Man's son, and who cares, right? So just call him Iron Man. Let's just get back to what people want, So there you go. Anyway, so back to the markets. So yeah, render token. I liked it. It did correct a lot more than I thought it would, but it was performing technically very well, which is why I did like it. When we take a step back and look at the big picture, you can see that it has been in this range. So there's, it was trading in the center of its range when actually it looked very bullish. I've gone to a weekly chart just to show you. But on the shorter term, this was the base that I liked, and it was trading higher in a fairly decent upward trend. Now, it corrected a bit more than I would have liked. This $1.60, it may have been a stop. I can't remember what I said about it last time, but it's certainly picking up again. So I like it. I still like it. I may have been stopped out on a position on it, but I wouldn't mind rejoining it. So I think it's a buy again. There's one small caveat. I was looking at the chart of NVIDIA, which is making a very small technical reversal, potential head and shoulders reversal. So that's the only thing that might make me think we get a small correction there. But I don't know whether it's necessarily completely correlated between the two. But let me just get you that chart so you can see what I'm talking about. So if you look at NVIDIA, you see it's got left shoulder head, potential right shoulder. Usually that's signs of a reversal once it breaks this 407 level, which, look, let's face it, it's had such a good run. It wouldn't matter if it had a bit of a correction before it keeps going up again. So that's the only thing. I was looking there and thinking, well, will this go up given its space, given that this might correct? But overall, I still like it. It's still okay. But I accept that there may be cheaper and better things to look at. But if I could only trade this and I was forced to take a position, I'd say I'd buy it.
Nice. So remember, when everyone gets super hot on something, usually there's a cooling off period, but this trend is interesting with this higher low that we're seeing on the charts here. And so it's indicating that probably it's got a bigger future ahead of it. Now, if it'd gone below, you almost look like it could be a head and shoulders, but notice how the recent low is a lot higher than the previous low. So it's showing you that it probably wants to continue higher. And it's just a probabilities thing. Now, I think Render is one of the strongest projects with the biggest recognition, because notice in life that it's not always the very best product that wins. It's often the very best known product that wins. And Render is one of the best known in the space that also has a good product towards this idea of decentralized computing, right? Using cryptocurrency to find a way to reward people for putting their computers to work, rendering the metaverse or other things or video games for other people in a way that people can put their computers to work and receive some kind of compensation for it. Well, blockchain really makes that better. Now, you can do that with a company that's not using blockchain. It's just hard to find rewards. Blockchain makes those capabilities easier and easier to decentralize and easier to reward people in ways that they can. And so blockchain does help this use case, and Render's kind of leading that charge, though there are a lot of projects working on this problem. Cool. So I would rate this as, I like Render. It's decent where it's at. I'm not buying it because there's so many other options. At the current price, I rate it as a buy. Am I buying it? No, because the market cap's too high for what I'm interested in. I'm in lower cap ones that I hope will go much, much higher, because I expect Render will do well in the coming bull run. Now, next bull market or bear market going into the bull market, I'll probably mostly only be in blue chips. But this one, I'm in almost no blue chips. I'm in lower market cap projects, a lot of them between 500,000 up to 30 million market caps, and Render is far outside that range. So great project. I rate as a buy, though I'm not holding it. Cool. Let's take a look at Drive.
Drife, it's been on the show a few times, isn't it? And it looked interesting here at a different part of the cycle, I'd say, when obviously we were still in the bear market and it was trying to push against it. It's with everything else recovering, it hasn't recovered as much as I would have liked at this stage, because we had this bear market. Yeah, we had the consolidation and we were waiting for the secondary move, and that didn't really happen. So just drawing in all these highs, you can see that they're still in place. And it was, I think the last time we talked about it, it was very close to this low, and it broke below it, but to its credit, it recovered and it had another go and rallied right from that point. So you could say this is a double bottom, which is true. So it's had a 9% move in one day, which is interesting, but it still hasn't quite done enough for me to pull the trigger on it. I want to see this pattern of higher lows broken, but there are signs of life there. So again, this is another one that I wouldn't turn my back on. I wouldn't want it to be the same period between when we looked at it and now again. In other words, we should return to this definitely within a couple of weeks, because it looks like it's on the move and it doesn't have to do very much to break this trend line. But still, we have got this overarching pattern of lower highs. So it's got a bit of work to do. It's got a lot of wood to chop, as we say, in terms of resistance that's ahead. But has it got a chance of making a major base? Yeah, absolutely. So if I was highly speculative and just going in for a 1 week trade, this is the sort of thing that I might jump on board, because this double bottom is quite a nice pattern. But I have to be a bit more cautious because we're looking a bit more longer term here. And given that this trend line is right in here, I'd say it's a wait at this point, but definitely one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, this is one of the ones that one of the bets I am taking. Let me share this. So this is Coin Market Cap. Market cap juicy down all the way at 590,000. Now, this is risky. Understand, like, Drife could fail. I've had the CEO on a couple times, and they're making a decentralized competitor to Uber. Now, some of the risks with this. So this is the real talk, right? What are the risks? This is the kind of analysis that I was looking for when I was coming into crypto, that I didn't find channels talking about, okay, what are the probabilities? What are the possible upsides if things go well? What are the risks? Could this fail? Let's be very real. Yes, it can fail. I don't know exactly what the percentages are. I just have my guesses of what the percentages are that it could fail. And let's say that percentage is 50% that it could fail. And that if it doesn't fail, it goes up. If it just survives into the bull market, then it goes up 20x. But if it survives and thrives and gets some traction in the bull market, it goes up 200x. Okay, so 50% chance of failure. So any money I throw into this, 50% chance it completely goes away. But if it doesn't and it just survives, it'll 20x from there. And if it survives and thrives, it will 200x. So what I don't like about gambling is, let's say you have a 50-50 chance at gambling. If you're playing roulette, it's not even 50-50 chance. It's about a 47% chance. And if you win, you double your money. And if you lose, like if you just throw it all on black, you double your money. And if you lose it all, and you've got a 47% chance of winning. Well, what I like about this is that your chances are, say, 50-50. But if you win, you don't double your money. It goes way, way up from there. Now, would I ever throw all my money into one like this? No, I wouldn't. I would diversify across a whole bunch of them, because diversified across a whole bunch of them, even if 50% of them fail, but the upside is so high, my overall returns would be really, really good versus being in lower cap projects that aren't nearly as risky. And so that's why I choose to be in the riskier space that I'm in. And Drife is one of the ones I like. Does it need to do blockchain with what they're doing? Not really. Centralized comparators are doing an okay job. There are some efficiencies blockchain can create here. And it's really cool what they're doing with their franchise model. And I really like their leadership team. But the question I have is, will they run out of money before they really catch enough traction and the bull market comes in and they get enough drivers, enough riders? Well, that's a risk. That may happen, that they run out of funds and aren't able to borrow more and their company goes belly up. I would say the chance is, I don't know, maybe 50%, maybe it's only 20% that happens. So understand there are risks here, and I'm going in like knowing what the risks are. If it survives into there, and I like the leadership of the team, she is fantastic. She's very smart. She's very well connected within India, very good businesswoman, but that doesn't guarantee that the project will be successful. If they are, from here, it could do massive things. It could do more than even a 200x. And so this is kind of what, if you had a chart of the land on Axie Infinity, this is what that chart would have looked like. And just know that Axie Infinity could have failed. It didn't, but it could have. And there were several points I was very worried that it wasn't going to make it. And then they had a company come in and buy some equity in their company, which gave them some money, which helped them survive the last bear market, because the last bear market was very long. And that company that came in and bought some of them was Animoca Brands, and they helped make sure they were a success. And prior to that, I don't know if they would have made it if that hadn't happened. And I guess I think Drife was able to make some equity, do an equity raise or something and get some additional capital. I think I heard that in our Discord chat. There's a few of our Rainmaker family that follow Drife really closely. And so, yeah, if they did, then they should be flush with capital for another while longer, because right now it's about surviving to that next bull market. And then the token will be good, even if it doesn't end up doing tremendous in the future. Which I would love to see it do tremendous. I would love to see another competitor to Uber and Lyft and some of the other companies out there, especially if it brings costs for getting rides down while increasing what the drivers make. Cool. Bro says, more Drive perspective, their blockchain development is not good. That's interesting. That does factor in. If they just survive until the next bull market, their token will probably do well in the coming bull market as money gets thrown at everything. What he's referring to impacts is how well will it do? Because can they do really good if they don't get their whole model worked up and their riders and drivers figured out? No. And this was a concern I had with Axie Infinity. I actually saw an AMA with their team, and it almost made me sell their land at a big loss, because their team, I was like, I don't know that their team has the capabilities to put together what they're just so young. They're so inexperienced. When Animoca Brands came in, not only did they give them some additional revenues, but Animoca Brands had the connections to help bring in a sophisticated team to help the current people running it just grow business wise. And so since then, those founders have tremendous experience, and they've grown tremendously. And so Axie Infinity has done tremendously well. But that's really good, bro. Thank you for sharing that. All right. What else do we have? We have Spores, and then we'll jump into some more of the viewer suggestions.
Okay, so Spores on the technical front is consolidating, so I can keep this brief. It looks interesting that it looks like it's curving around here just very subtly, and it is off its low. So comparing it to the previous chart, we can see that there's been some bullish activity. There was an inverse head and shoulders pattern here that kicked off this move, but it's come all the way back to this area, this 0.0002423. I would say that is the line in the sand for me. If it gets below there, I would be personally, I would be bailing. It's very speculative buy. It's not moving yet. Again, it's one of those ones that's just waiting, and it may take a bit longer before money flows down to this particular project. Speculatively, could nibble at it here, but I need to see a bit more, and it's not actually moving as yet. But I do like the fact that there is this small curve here, which again would mean keep an eye on it, come back to it, and don't leave the same amount of time before we come back to this one as we did before. So one other thing to point out here is that the range is getting tighter and tighter. So if you look at the highs and lows, they're compressing, and usually that precedes a much bigger move. So hopefully that will be to the upside, and it will kick off a nice trend. But I can't say that that's happened until it's happened, and then that would be the signal. But the fact that it's compressing is interesting. So we're looking at a very interesting time. We need to come back to it. So
when you rate this a wait, but
so for the moment it's a wait, yeah, but it's an interesting wait as opposed to come back in
you
like
asterisk by it to keep a close eye. I would agree with that. They had right here this little trouble signal. They had a hack of their liquidity pool, which then when hackers get a hold of the liquidity, they dumped it on the market, and that hurt the project for a while. So if you take out that hack, it probably might have still looked somewhat like this. And you see this nice rounding here. And I like it. I mean, its market cap is 427,000. It's super cheap. I like the people leading this. They're well connected in Asia. Remember, Asia, the market is turning around there for crypto faster than it is everywhere else. And it's probably going to lead the charge. And they're super well connected in the Asia and Asia gaming spaces. And so I think that's why the chart is looking like this. And there's just a lot unaware that Asia is turning around because, I mean, I don't read Mandarin. I don't read Korean. I don't read Japanese. And I don't read Vietnamese. I can't understand a lick of it. And so I don't catch a lot of that news unless it gets translated for me. But in the West, oftentimes we don't look at Asia, but Asia has some interesting metrics for blockchain, for cryptocurrency, for gaming, is that in Asia, like specifically Korea and Japan, is that video gamers spend more money than Americans do. And Americans usually spend more money than everyone else in different things. That's interesting, though, that in Asia, Korea and Japan, they spend more money per gamer. And so this is why watch blockchain gaming in Asia, because they spend even more than the US does. And their regulators have been much more pro cryptocurrency than the US has been. So watch for them to lead the charge into blockchain gaming, and the US trying to play catch up with this because the regulators have kept the US behind on a lot of things. And that often happens when a country has a lot of success, is that the regulators get ahead of themselves and they kind of get lazy, while other countries get competitive against those and they want to catch those advantages because they want to move up against them. And I think that's why in Asia, a lot of their regulators have been much more progressive and on top of cryptocurrency and favorable legislation, because they want all these project and companies to really develop out of their countries. And it will lead to massive revenues and good things for their economies over the US, especially the longer the US SEC and other regulators keep cryptocurrency suppressed in the US. It just means more money, more development flowing into these other countries. And so watch Asia do well. It is a strong buy for me. Fantastic suggestion. I really like it at this, and I'll probably pick up some more myself at these prices. I like what the chart is doing. Now, it could go down from here. It's just a bet in that I think it's probably near lows. Maybe it goes down more, but that my bet is that in the future coming year or two, as long as they survive, and I'm pretty sure they will. I've been following the team a lot more closely the last 6 months, actually since December last year, when I called them one of my top undervalued projects. And from there, they went over 10x, and that's come back and retraced some. Cool. So yeah, it's time for me to add to my position again. Awesome. Let's jump over to OMI. We had one before that. ICP came in before that. Then we'll look at OMI.
Right. Okay. Well, Well, we don't need to. All we need to do is look at ICP, and then that's it. We should be done because there's nothing else.
Because it's going to eat everything.
There's nothing else to look at. Just
ICP. This chart definitely says it's going to eat everything.
I mean, never say never, but at the moment it's in sort of last place in the running, and perhaps with new management it'll turn around, as it were, if it were a football team. Look, the trend is still down here, so I personally, in the way that I look at things, and the market can miss, especially in this space, it can not value something correctly, which is why it's such an interesting endeavor. And perhaps this is a fantastic buy, and you're right. And I would never say that I'm definitely right and anyone else is definitely wrong, because we've all got the same chance, really. But as far as the trend goes, it's still down. So once it starts eating everything else, I will jump on board the trend. I would say a metric that's worth looking at is when it gets over the 200-day moving average, which is around $4.21. You can see this purple line. It's moving to the downside. Once it does that, I will, I'll be more interested in it from a technical point of view. But whilst it's below it and this pattern of sort of falling highs is in play, I think for me, it's definitely a wait and possibly a sell, but I would say it's definitely a wait.
I remember when this launched and the price was right here. So this is May 2021. Like, the whole crypto market is way, way up, and this launched and everybody's talking about it out of nowhere, right? Oh my gosh, ICP is the biggest thing ever. How much are you buying? Was the question people were asking me. And I was like, none. The market cap is like 80 billion for a project that just launched. I am not touching this thing with a 10-foot pole. It's looking a lot more attractive. And normally, based on this chart, I would rate it a buy, and probably it is a buy for me. But before I did buy, number one, I'm not holding things in market caps of this price range, really. But now it's attractive to me. Then it wasn't. It hadn't launched. I had no history on it. It was such an overinflated market cap. And usually there's vesting schedules on when the tokens are going to get released. And I suspected something like this might happen. Now, I didn't know that it would happen. I just suspected it would. But now it has. It's come down over 99%. And so now I look at this price and I was like, that's a lot more attractive. But sometimes projects, just because there was tons of hype about them, is there enough substance there? Obviously, our friend thinks that there is. And someone else asked us to look at it. The question I want to ask is, like, is the team, like, before I bought this, I would be watching multiple AMAs with the team. Doesn't matter what channel it's on. Hopefully they ask them good questions, but I just want to get a feel for the team behind it and their vision, because I have seen some projects come out and raise billions of dollars and do absolutely nothing, even though they generated a lot of hype and they had the pedigree. One of them was one of the Ethereum co-founders, and they created this project. They raised billions of dollars the way that they did the fundraising for it, and they didn't do shit. And so just know that that's a possibility. And so what I'd be vetting is trying to listen to the team, their vision, where it's going, and trying to determine if it's a good risk and that the odds really are in my favor. This chart would suggest that if I'm a fundamental buyer, a lot of the token vesting has happened, a lot of the price being punished has happened, and that by this chart alone, it would see that my odds are in the favor that when the bull market comes and everything's going up, that probably I'll do really well on this. But I just want to confirm that the team knows where they're taking this and that they're going to deliver something of value, because the chart, in my opinion, looks favorable for the bull run, which might be a year away. It might be 2 years away. It might be 6 months away. I don't know when. But I like where the price is at. So it's a tentative buy, but I'd really need to know. And, our friend, like, is it really going to take over, like, all of crypto? No. And with where the market cap is at 1.3 billion, could it 100x from here? Well, shoot, its market cap was almost that high before. and it had just launched. So in a bull market, it could do 100x from here. If the team has a good vision and can really take it there, it could far exceed 100x if that is the case. So that's a big if, though. So that's what I want to see, is how that plays out. It's on a lot of the bigger exchanges. So it's on Coinbase, it's on Kraken, it's on KuCoin, it's on Binance. So you can get it everywhere. And Coinbase having it says a lot about Coinbase believes that it'll be a big deal. But yeah, we'll see. All right, let's take a look at OMI, because I'm not convinced it'll devour the whole internet or the whole blockchain space, but I do think it's very, very interesting. So actually really good suggestion. And someone else suggested that too, a little bit later down.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's always interesting to have strong views, and they could be right. I think that's the fun thing about all of this. You know, it will be interesting to see if it does it. So what a call that would be.
Yeah, it would. Especially, you know what? I will say he's right. If it goes over 500x from here, is he completely right? No, there's no way it devours all of like the crypto space. But if it goes over a market cap of $500 million, I'll be behind that he was dang right on that.
I think he was saying it tongue in cheek as well. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So yeah. So do you want to switch over so I can get the OMI chart?
Yeah. Let's do it.
Okay. So OMI, yeah, there was never mind. I was going to say there's just a level there at $3.36 on ICP that was quite a nice one if it could break it. So this inverse head and shoulders is still playing out. We got the left shoulder, we got the head, we had the right shoulder decline, and then it hit some support. It's now turning around, which is exactly what we'd expect it or want it to do. But it's still in this big reversal pattern, which can take time, and it's not something that you can fast forward, unfortunately. But it's moving in the right direction. It's holding this trend line. It's still a buy for me, and I think it will stay there whilst we are over the breakout point, which was the 6694. Yeah, that'd be pretty painful if it fell all the way back to there and lower, but that was the buy point, that was the base. And whilst it's above there, you know, that's why I will stay bullish. But what's forming here is a big reversal. So if we take a step back, this would be the left shoulder, this is the head. As I say, this is the right shoulder that's playing out. So if it starts to move up from here, it looked really good. Now the final trigger, actually the trigger where one would buy, where one would actually take the first trade, is here at 0.0013. So it's very speculative to be looking at this at all below there from a technical point of view. One rule is you wait for the patterns to complete before jumping in. The only reason that we got a buy from a technical point of view was because we saw this base very early on, and it was a small base. It wouldn't necessarily predict that the market would change direction completely and go into a massive upward trend, but it did work out quite nicely. So as far as the technicals goes, it's working well, and this base is still developing, but it's still in a very speculative position, and I guess that's where big gains are potentially made or lost. So yeah,
I've been very disappointed in this one. I was really hoping for more cheap prices, and I guess, you know, what goes down does go up. Unfortunately, I wanted this one to stay around 0.05 or 0.06 cents for like a year. If I could have waved a magic wand and made it do what I want to do, would have stayed down at those prices. But I have been accumulating more of this because I really can't even complain about the current price that it's at. This is one of the higher market cap projects that I've been continuing to dollar cost average in. And just by the way things have worked out, like I wish I had way more of this one. And I have tens of millions of it. I just wish I had more. Yeah, so it just worked out with timing that when I dollar cost average into this, I didn't have as much liquidity free as I did. And I probably, even though the position I have, I'm probably down 2/3 on my OMI. Even with dollar cost averaging, I bought a whole bunch more here, which was great. And it brought my dollar cost average down a bunch, but I'm still up underwater on it, which I'm okay with. I wish I had a magic wand and I could have known that it would come down to these prices. I just would have waited because I would have 3x the amount of OMI that I have. It's just I don't have that magic wand. I'm just human too. And I'm really bullish on the fundamentals behind this. And I wish that the project would break to the downside as far as price. I don't see any reasons why it will, though I would love it if it does. And so I've been buying more around this price and gritting my teeth because, boy, these prices were so juicy. And as I free up more liquidity and it makes sense that I do, I've been just dollar cost averaging more into it. Because for me, anything under this price is actually like a huge green signal to me that it's a buy. Do I wish it was cheaper? Yes, because I would just end up with more of this. And I love this project. I love what they're doing. So this is the one that has the VV app. That's the leader in the digital collectible space. And I believe digital collectibles are going to be a really, really big deal. A lot of people aren't talking about them now. It's kind of like that narrative that 4 years ago I was talking about land on the blockchain, and everyone was like, oh, it's not. And they're giving me all these reasons it would fail and all these reasons why it was stupid. And then 2021 happened, and Axie Infinity absolutely took off, and people, that hadn't been paying attention to land on the blockchain, where suddenly everyone's talking about, oh my gosh, this idea of land on the blockchain, it's the biggest thing. And there's lots of reasons why digital collectibles might not happen, right? So VV has like digital versions of some of these legendary comics from back in the 1950s and even the 1940s and 30s. Some of these comics that if you had a physical version of them that was printed back then and you had it in good condition could be worth millions and millions of dollars. Well, VV partnered with Marvel and made some of those comics and brought the first digital versions of those. And I've heard some people argue that that won't be a big deal. And it could be that they're right. I can't see the future. I don't know. And it could be that they're very, very wrong. And in the future, a lot of collectors will prefer digital over physical because you can take it with you anywhere. You can store it. You could showcase it much easier on your social media in the future than what you can. Say you have that Spider-Man original comic, The Amazing Spider-Man #1 or something. How often do you get to show that off? Like when somebody comes over to your house, right? Or you can take a picture with it and post it on your stuff. But in the future, you'll be able to take these digital comics and you'll be able to link it to your socials. That probably people will be able to go into your little metaverse house and they'll be able to see with it. They might even be able to interact with it and read it. And it will be probably a big social flex and a representation of what you're interested in. So I think digital comics and digital collectibles have a gigantic future and that this wave hasn't caught on yet. And as it does, well, then a lot of money and focus will come into COPI and some of the other projects doing this, as well as some of those collectibles, and COPI's leading that space. So you asked a really good question about what I think the price could do realistically. So that is a very loaded question. Now, realistically, I think 1 to 10 cents is being pretty realistic. It hit 1.4 cents before. So what will it actually do? I don't know. What could it do? 1 to 10 cents realistically. Now, will it do better than that? It could. It could go all the way to $5. But there will have to be some things happen for that to even be possible that I don't know if they'll happen. First of all, this idea of digital collectibles will have to become like a worldwide thing that people go absolutely crazy for them. And that in most of the countries around the world, you have people that are talking about it endlessly, people that weren't even in the crypto space talking about it. Now, that could happen this cycle. It could happen the following one. There is a chance it happens this coming cycle and that it becomes a really big deal. And everybody's talking about XYZ digital comic and, oh my gosh, do you have it? And it would take that for that to happen and for their metaverse, the VVverse, to launch and really get some traction. Hopefully you'll be able to link it to your socials, that you can put a link on, say, your Twitter account that if people click on it, takes them into your little house in the metaverse or the VV-verse, and they can see all that stuff you're passionate about. If those things come together, then Bitcoin could do something crazy. Like $1 would be absolutely crazy. $5 would be absolutely nuts, but it is possible. I would say more conservatively 1 to 10 cents, but $1 to $5 is possible, but only if the craziness happens. Cool.
Do you believe sometimes that the universe tries to give you a message? And I don't know whether this is right or not, but I've got to tell you, I've got to share this with you.
Okay.
So I was walking past a bench, and on that bench was this book, the Bitcoin Standard. I can't show it to you because it's being phased out, but there we go. The Bitcoin Standard, right?
Yeah.
It's like, how on earth has that been left on a bench? And then I open it up. It's been signed by Michael Saylor.
No way.
Yeah. It says, it is hope. Here we go. See if I can get them. It says Bitcoin Standard. It's hope. Michael Saylor. Isn't that amazing? I was like, what? To have a signed copy. So I'm like, okay. So the bull market is coming, and that is the message. So we're early. We just got to deal with the, all this noise until everyone else works it out. So there we go.
The patience it takes, and a lot of people wash out during this space. I've actually been racking my mind, Paul, on like, why do so many people not make money in this space? I know the millions and millions of dollars that are out there for people that do it right, but most people don't even give themselves the chance to learn to do it right before they just wash out and they throw in the towel and they're done. And some people stick around, but they're not taking the right action. So I was thinking, how do I communicate to people ways to think about this that work out well for them over time? And so some of the solutions, I did release a course recently that helps, and there's a link to that below. Also, like our Patreon, I did realize that community is everything, that we're social creatures. No man can live on an island. So that's why we do have the free Telegram group, but more importantly, the Discord that people can join. And in the entry level is $20 a month and gives you access to people who think the same way, and access to, because we set that up, we've had like no scammers so far come in, no bots, no weirdness. It's kind of, the $20 is the gate that keeps all the crap out for the most part, and that they're committed people that you're listening to and able to have really good, interesting discussions with. And so community is a big part of it. And because so many people wash out of this space, well, I have friends that got started with me in 2017 that washed out in 2019 and totally disregarded the crypto space, and they missed. And during that time, like, it led to life-changing money for me. And I'm like, why did so many otherwise smart people, like, why are they missing out on this? Why are they not getting it? Why did they? And some of them have come back after they saw what happened in 2021, but they missed a whole cycle that they could have had a whole cycle to benefit from. And how do you help people see it? Like, right? So
there we go. Trading is difficult, but
yeah,
anyway,
it is.
Until next week.
Do you have 5 minutes for dive into? We had some latecomers come in, but I know we're long on time. Do you have 5 minutes to look into Bump and COPI?
Sure. Bumper is still correcting. Should we
yeah, let me
switch my screen?
Sure.
Okay, so this was making this head and shoulders pattern, and then we got this news. It was a buy the rumor, sell the facts situation, and it hasn't quite recovered yet. It's put in a few markers, but it's still in this downward trend. So I think broadly speaking, this is still a base, and what we will see is when Bitcoin sort of trades over 33,000, it will pick up again, because I reckon the correlation to it will be, more people are speculating, the more people will want to get involved with this particular project. So for the moment, I think broadly speaking, long term it's a buy, but in the short term it's a wait. So I know we're going to look at this quite often. So I say for the minute it's just a wait, because I want to see where it puts in a support point that we can then move off from. And it could be here, it could well be here, but it's lows here. So if it was here, that'd be really good. We get a nice upward trend, and we can start talking about it heading back towards the 10 cents area.
Yeah.
And if it gets back to there, then it will be a break of it. So there's a few steps ahead, but for the moment, I just want to see where it settles and where it digs its heels in, starts turning around.
If 4 cents, I couldn't pass it up, and I did buy some more. I was just like, it's just too juicy. Now I hope it comes down cheaper. I would love for it to go to like 2.7 cents. But for me, not only is it a buy, but I did buy right around. Actually, I paid about 4 cents, so it's a little bit below what I paid, which I'm happy with the 4 cent price. And if it comes down lower, I'll be even happier because then I'll just buy some more. Will this project survive? Well, their alpha is live, and for what I know, it's working fine. Like everything's going well. Obviously, the team hoped that it would like take off and do tremendously from here, and that it would be smooth sailing ahead. That almost never happens in a bear market, but they did get some traction. They did get some awareness, and now they have something live and working that people can actually use, and then they can expand their use case not only on ETH onto the layer 2s that just have cheaper fees to make the product work better. So I'm excited where the future is. So as long as they survive, I think that what they're doing is extremely innovative. And I've seen a lot of companies come out, they launch their thing, and it doesn't come out to this huge fanfare because it's a bear market. And they're really sad. And then later, as the market takes off, is when their project then catches on. I mean, I did see that with Axie Infinity. I had to be patient for 2.5 years before that did extremely well. And so I thought Axie Infinity at the time was very innovative. I think what Bumper's doing could change the way people hedge their risk, and just waiting to see if it plays out and hope it gets cheaper in the meantime. Cornucopias, let's take a look at.
This is an interesting one. We haven't looked at it for a while. Range bound short term, it's been trading this range. Big picture, it's kind of, there's no big trend in either direction. If you averaged out the price of all these prices, I reckon it'd be close to where it is now, maybe a little higher. It's got this upward trend here, which is good. It's respecting it, so it's trading nicely from a technical point of view. So it's just rallying actually from that now, which is good. So this would be a buy on this trend line, and the resistance zone I put in here between 2.6 and 2.8 cents. That's where I would feel more comfortable at breaking through, because there's resistance from here when the people were buying it. And obviously when it went through there aggressively, see how they bailed out. So when it goes back up there, those people that bought here will want to get out. And so if it can trade through that, that would be a really good sign. And bit of resistance from this point as well. But yeah, short term, I think it's worth a nibble here, just a small amount, because it's not in a massive upward trend. It's, like I say, broadly speaking, when you look at all the data, it's a range. So I'd buy a little bit against this trend line. If it goes, then I'd be probably quick to jump out again and then look to rebuy it if it goes up again. So this could be one that I personally would trade in and out until it settles down. But I like the fact that it's respected the trend line, so I'm just going with that.
Fantastic. I like this one a lot, and I've had the founders on a lot. One of the critical elements that they have built already is a community. They have very strong community, and this makes a difference because when you have a really good product, your best evangelists are your community, and the bigger that community is, the more people you have telling other crypto people about it. That it's like the community that spreads the word. And I saw that with Axie Infinity. Axie Infinity didn't launch massive marketing. It was people that were playing it, that were telling their friends about it, that really spread the news on Axie Infinity. So it cost them very few marketing dollars as it was going viral because community members were getting other community members involved. Their graphics are very good. The team is very transparent. I like the team. They're gamers themselves. They're also good businessmen. They're just fun people, and the team behind it is fun, and they make a lot fun. If you listen to them, they're very focused and work very hard, but they're also like laid back, fun, not letting the stressors get to them. And I like to see that in a team because they're passionate about what they're doing. And when you're working in your passion, it's not work for you. And that's just the vibe I get from them. So though the market cap is higher than I wish it was, because I wish it would come way, way back down to these levels again. I don't know that it will. And it's not too high above that. It's about double that. But this has come down to a really juicy price again. So I would rate it as a buy on this trend line. And I pray that it breaks below that trend line. Why? Because I would like to dollar cost average and have more cornucopias tokens than I have now. I have a ton of land in the cornucopias universe. And I have a bunch of their tokens, but I would love far more tokens. And so it's a buy for me at this price. And hopefully it breaks to the downside and it will become a cheaper buy, because long term, I think this one has really good prospects. I played their game. I got access to it as an OG in their Discord, and it's pretty cool. Like the graphics, good level. You can run around. Like there's not tons for you to do yet, but it might end up being one of the first metaverses that really catches on. And it's more like a game that has a metaverse in it rather than a metaverse that hopefully will have some games. And I feel like that's probably a better way to go, because people will be there to play the game, and that the metaverse aspect of it will just be there. People have something to do in the metaverse, which is what brings them in, and that people will just find ways to socialize within that because they can. And I think that's going to be an easier way to get bigger adoption of your metaverse, is have a game that people are in there to play. Then they end up talking to other people and enjoying conversation with people inside of probably the way that catches on traction better. Cool. Well, that's all the stuff I have. Any thoughts from you, Paul, as we wrap up?
No, I think we've covered quite a lot. So, until next week, which, by the way, if possible, could we do Tuesday? Maybe let me know.
Yeah. Let me double check. I don't see why that wouldn't work. Let's do Tuesday.
Okay, so it's Tuesday. Thank you so much. I'm just traveling on Wednesday, so at least everyone knows who's watching now, how we organize their diaries. So until next week, thank you so much. Thanks, everybody, and see you then.
So I've been releasing a lot of videos on mindset lately, because I realize that it's mindset that often interrupts us. Mindset and focus on the right things. Because I've asked myself, why, even though the massive money is here for crypto, why do so many people not achieve it? Because some even stay in the crypto market, but they aren't doing the right things. And so they don't have the success they're looking for, even though the success is there. And they even did the right thing of sticking around. So they got that part right, but they're not buying low. They're not researching and identifying things. They're not buying where the odds are stacked for them. They buy when the odds are stacked against them. Like they chase green candles and they pump. And why is it that they make these bad decisions over and over again? A lot of that comes from mindset and focus, that sometimes they really don't believe that they can make it work with this. And that kind of leads them to bad actions, because somebody who is focused on making it happen and believes that they can, even though they might make a mistake, they learn from it immediately. They recognize it was bad because it's interrupting towards the goal they know they're going to reach. And then they start taking correct actions, and they almost correct towards the right actions right away because they know what they can achieve from this and they believe it. And so that's why you've seen a lot of my message be focused on the right framework to think about this. I'll still continue covering fundamentals, and that's what this episode with Paul is deep into that. There'll be other videos on which ones I like, but if you don't have your frame of reference right, if you still can't get behind the fact of what you can achieve here, then that gets in the way. And so I've just been trying to share how real this is, how possible this is. It's been a bear market for like 24 months now. And so people start to, as human beings, we have what's called recency bias. What has been happening, our subconscious wants to believe is what's going to continue to happen. In markets don't work that way. So when things have always been, they've been going up for so long, we have the recency bias that, it's just going to continue going up for forever. And it doesn't play out that way. And when it's been going down for what feels like forever, the assumption is it's going to continue like this. It doesn't. And it swips around. And sometimes those turnarounds are very sharp and very quick. And so if you're not taking the right actions when it's down like this, you're not setting yourself up for the best turnaround when it happens. So right now is like go time. It is critical time. This is time to be jumping in, researching, learning, probably making some smart decisions. And yes, because I suspect that a lot of these projects that we're looking at in a year or two from now are going to be vastly higher than they are now. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. This wrap, you guys know what this wrap is all about. This just reinforces the principles that I share, just in a fun way to encapsulate it all. See you soon.
Came into the space, chasing all of the gains, chasing the pumps and all of the hype trains. But like in life...
Well, shoot. You know what? I left SLND out, so I'm going to jump over to SLND. Yes, Blonde, thank you for bringing that up. Shoot, I dropped that ball. So let's take a look at SLND. And unfortunately, Paul is not here, so we will not get Paul's wisdom on it. And we are seeing some bottoming out. So this is the first time I've had to come back after the video, I think. But after I started the video, so it went all the way to 36 cents. It's at 49 cents. So let's look at some really important numbers. Circulating supply is 35% of the total tokens are now in circulation. Here's a question, though. This is a really important question. Does Alameda Research still have any tokens which might have to get sold off in their liquidation? And if so, this number is going to drop from there. Now, I still have my SLND. And yeah, I've been completely punished. I'm down 90-something% on that. Do I help it to go well? I always like the project behind it. And I don't feel like the project made missteps other than who they allowed to be the market maker. And that was a mistake. And who knew that it was going to go that way? I had no idea the shenanigans that, I haven't seen that they've done this. This is just came from a project that had used them as a market maker, that they tried to buy off, offered them millions of dollars to sign a non-disclosure so they couldn't talk about all this stuff. And they refused to take the non-disclosure, even though they would have got a bunch of money for signing it, because they felt it was important enough to share what they had seen that Alameda Research had done to them, and they had heard they had done to other projects. And this isn't Sam Bankman-Fried. This was someone else that was running the market making for Alameda Research. And that was fascinating, because then all of a sudden what happened to SLND made sense, because it shouldn't have had the ability to drop down to these prices, because all the tokens were locked up except for those that people were earning by using it. But there weren't enough tokens to be dumping the prices back down when it was dumping. And yet it happened, and it made no sense to me. I was like, I don't understand what's happening. And then I heard him talking about what Alameda Research had done to his project, and it all made sense. So whenever something's happening that shouldn't be happening, well, it's happening because there are things that you don't understand that are going on. And that's exactly what the case was. So as I understood what they had done to this other project, then all of a sudden the chart made more sense, and I didn't realize that that was a risk, that somebody with such a big name like that would totally be doing such crazy things to the projects that had trusted them with market making, and they were destroying the projects that trusted them, destroying them, savage them. I can't imagine doing that myself to anyone ever, and yet, boy, they did it not just to one company, but to many. At least that's what the allegations are. That is terrible, and that is shady shit. And it's unfortunate that SLND got punished by that, because an otherwise good project, and hopefully they survive this bear market and do well from here. I refuse to sell at these prices. I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to ride this one out. And if it turns a positive, and I suspect it will, it'll probably go even above what I bought at. But yeah, I'm just going to write it out. And if it fails, it fails. Oh, well, that's why I diversify. And if it goes way up from here, fantastic. But I always like the project behind it. And Solana needs some good DeFi protocols. And these are one of the biggest. So they got a good shot. Cool. Everyone, back to the wrap. Thanks so much. See you soon.
Came into the space, chasing all of the gains, chasing the pumps and all of the hype trains. But like in life, shit bad before you're good. Was told to buy when it was pouring like a rainmaker should. I buy when it's down, don't chase the boats that I miss. Cause I always made the time in mind. I take the one out cause I'm patient like that. And I'll wait for the right time. I sell when it's high, I buy when it's low. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm just a rainmaker running the show. Calculated investments, I don't leave with my heart. The principles are simple, they're leaving a mark. Buy when it's boring, just gotta be smart. I sell when it's hype, like all the channels they pump it. That's when I was selling, go parabolic and dump it. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Time is never better, the time like the present. This next 5 years is a gift and it's feeling like heaven. I'm committed to learn, to study and to know that nothing comes easy but with knowledge the game show. Sticking out this wrong cause soon will come a bear market. Learning and growing and when it's slow will be the target. They say it's come out, Bitcoin is dead. The massive decreases can get to your head. Sticking around, the time is better. Strong like that, I'll let the others be fretters. 2 years time the ball will bring back the gains. That makes it worth the effort cause here comes the rain. So let's go rainmakers, let's make it all happen. Let go of the hate, let the haters be crapping. I'm here for 5 years, let's do this together. The time is right, the time could be better. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Haters be hating, the time to slow down. Addressing what they say when I'm wearing my crown. They're chasing green candles like someone who was new. I got a vision that was bigger, helping me to push through. I'm still human and sometimes it is rough. And that's what makes me special, simply I stay tough. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck.